Hey everybody, this is Perch, and if you follow comic news, you undoubtedly have heard that Aftershock has filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. So first off, what is Chapter 11? Basically, this is a way to companies reorganize. So a lot of people mistake Chapter 11 bankruptcy as the company is over, this is the finish line, but generally, the way that Chapter 11 is applied is an attempt to try and restructure the company so that, in theory, the people who are owed money, the people who have either owed payments or invested in the company, have a path or a way to get that money back. And the company is being more or less forced into reorganizing and changing its business in order to achieve this goal. It's often one of those cases where companies will live in perpetuity of just owing people money, and that's kind of where I think Aftershock has been for a little while. We're going to get into why this triggered now, but a lot of smaller comic companies, and definitely right around the corner is Valiant, that is expected to announce its own restructuring relatively soon, as well as I'm hearing a lot of talk that at the beginning of the year in January, we're going to see layoffs from some pretty big companies. And I don't have enough certain news, but certainly enough hints that we're going to see some bankruptcies among some of the second string companies, particularly ones that have, say, European investors or companies that are media companies who do games and movies, and that is their core business. And they bought into comics with the hope that this would be an IP generation machine that would one day lead them to make films as popular as the MCU, or at the very least get a profitable deal out of Netflix or Hulu or one of those companies. So as we get into Aftershock, you're going to hear a lot of speculation about why it happened, failing Western comics models, etc. But there really is one primary reason behind this. And you can see it in the people who are owed money by Aftershock, again, which we'll get into a second. But there was this gold rush attempt to get comic companies connected into people who could take those properties and make movies out of them or TV shows out of them. And that was where all the money was going to be. And so you had a lot of business losing deals that were not on the front profitable or could actually be could actually function on their own. If no movie deal existed, the entire business would collapse. But you saw a lot of these companies artificially inflated by investors and other groups because they believe that promise would pay off, and it hasn't. And so all the companies that leverage themselves against that, be it the IDWs, the Dark Horses, the etc., are now in some trouble. And Aftershock and Valiant certainly are further along that path. But you're going to see several people hit. The real warning signs, or the news, was when we learned that Netflix was pulling back, that they were having trouble with subscribers, that all the streaming services that temporarily had a boost during COVID because nobody could go anywhere were now starting to bleed some cash, look at some consolidation, lay off some employees. The ripple effect is now hitting comics. So Aftershock being forced to basically restructure and change because, and again, I can't put this point home enough. A lot of small comic companies, they're too small for somebody to really get in and make a lot of noise about it. And so you'd see them owe money to people sometimes for, there's been some companies out there have owed money for 5 years or more to creators, but the dollar amount is low enough that it really doesn't move the needle. And so as a result, it just kind of continues as it is. It finds new people to come in. It can, it's one of those we'll pay you when we have money kind of scenarios. And there's been a lot of those. But now with some of the bigger people who are owed cash, it can't continue. So Chapter 11 will force itself to change. So in its filing, Aftershock reported 10 to 15 million in assets, along with 10 to 15 million in liabilities or debt. The reality is the assets are closer to the 10 and the debt is closer to the 50, but that is, that's how often this goes. That kind of range, a $40 million range, is an absurdly high range. And that's basically being very generous in the filing in the hopes that, some of this stuff could get sold off and the restructuring can still allow a path forward. I think that's going to be kind of tough. Anyway, it's filed Chapter 11 in a District of Central California court. And by the way, as a little piece of advice, I'll just slide around the corner. You want to incorporate in Delaware. not California. Never incorporate in California. If you just Delaware is where you incorporate. Anyway, Aftershock, the Sherman Oaks, California-based Aftershock, founded in 2015 by Mike Martz, who left Aftershock Media to become editor-in-chief of Mad Cave Studios a few months ago. Basically, Aftershock has published works by Brian Azzarello, Warren Ellis, Garth Ennis. I mean, come on, stop saying Garth Ennis. He's published work for every single company there is. I love Garth Ennis, but anyway, Marjorie Bennett, Paul Jenkins, Tim Seeley, Colin Bunn, Mark Wade, and Aftershock won the 2017 Diamond Comic Distributors Jim Award, New Publisher of the Year. Probably not winning it in 2023. Anyway, Brian Cunningham came in as a new editor-in-chief, and ex-IDW Chief Creative Officer and President Chris Rael came in as a publishing consultant. And by the way, if you're one of these small comic companies, I beg of you, when I say, you should hire legends, you should hire people, some of these people have been in comics for a long time, you should still give them work. I'm talking about the creators, the writers, and especially artists. That's who I'm talking about. I think if you're running a business, you would be well served, and nothing against Chris or Brian. Brian's a wonderful guy, but regardless, hire people with business experience outside of comics. Don't keep hiring people who have worked for companies that have struggled to turn a profit. That is not who you want in your top office. Put the money into the legends and the creators that you do. Anyway, regardless, the filing comes about 2 years after Aftershock Comics merged with TV film distribution company Rev Gauche to become Aftershock Media. At the time the merger was announced, to better leverage Aftershock's comic book properties more in TV, film, gaming, and podcasts. The blissful innocent 2000s. How about that? So anyway, what is owed here? And here's kind of the scary part. So, as we're hearing kind of various debts, a number of different comic creators, Matteo Monaco is owed $18,000. This is the artist for Knock 'em Dead and Chicken Devil. Emilio Pilo, artist on Bram Stoker Monster Hunter, $15,500. Alberto Lochelli, Where Starships Go to Die, $15,000. Iniki Miranda of We Live, that's a shame, as well as 2008 AD, $10,010, that extra $10, and a number of other artists. By the way, one little note here, you'll see that in a lot of these bankruptcy filings and big restructuring, people who are owed money, it's the artists. Why is it always the artists? It's almost rarely the writers. It's almost always the artists. Unfortunately, bad news for artists. Writers tend to dip the money out first, and they tend to be the ones that, in many cases, comic publishers, and this is super cynical and cruel, but publishers believe that the writers are going to squawk and make more noise when they're not paid than the artists. And so they feel perfectly content fucking over the artists. Anyway, Aftershock also owes San Diego Comic-Con $17,000, but here's the big kind of red herring, or there's a couple others. There's by the way, the printing, which was happening in Canada, they've got $400,000 of debt racked up there. But this is where the numbers are terrifying, and where you definitely see how the media business, the let's make money off the movies thing, where all the debt was being leveraged. So Jupiter Entertainment is owed $1.4 million. TBS CNN owns $750,000. AMC Networks $375,000. And it goes on and on and on. The big money is in the movies, and that is where the absolute huge debt goes. Anyway, there's so many other people that are owed money. Everybody from people we've interviewed on this channel, like Brian Edward Hill. We've got a number, Alex Segura, you know him, Dan Abnett, a lot of just a who's who of a ton of people in comics owed money, a few of which have forgotten that they are owed money because they've been waiting so long. But anyway, Aftershock, obviously, bad news. Chapter 11 typically means that the company is going to reorganize. You're going to see some new leadership. But unfortunately, the key here is all the money that is really indebted to, and the places where they're going to try and find the cash first, is going to come in the form of those Hollywood deals. Is going to be Jupiter Entertainment, CBS. It's going to be those people, and the investment bankers, others that might come into this thing to help straighten it out, are going to protect the Hollywood money first and the network. So it's bad news for comic creators. Maybe Aftershock can reemerge from this, but unfortunately, after you kind of hollow it out, I'd be surprised. Consolidation is more likely with some of the other people. You're going to see a lot of these properties sold off. So there you have it. I would expect to hear news about Valiant relatively soon. That's going to have some more restructuring that's going to need to go on. There's another company with heavy investment into media. Obviously, companies like Dark Horse and IDW put a ton of stock into the idea that they are taking on these film projects and hope they pay off. Tough times. I think 2023 is going to have a lot of these scenarios kind of unfortunately befalling it. So let me know your thoughts below. Let me know if you're reading any Aftershock comics and you're curious what happens next. And certainly interested in your speculation. But again, a lot of videos are going to be talking about various aspects of the culture war. The real piece here is that this is the inevitable result of putting your core business model not in the main crux of your business, but instead putting all that effort into this hope that the properties can get picked up and you'll have a loss leader of comics and the big money is in entertainment. That is the flaw here. And if it is not 100% clear, you must have a profitable, at least cash neutral, if not cash flow positive business in your core business, in this case, comics. And then the upside is the movies. If you're doing comics at a loss, you are taking a massive gamble, not just with yourself, but as you can see, a lot of other people's money. Thanks for listening.